today, Dr. Kelsey Evans, and I'm going to butcher the last one, Amalu?
Close enough. It's Amalu.
Amalu.
But I didn't know my own last name when I first met my husband. So
that makes me feel better. My A's are all messed up from being in Chicago anyways. And today we are talking about a very interesting topic, and we didn't name our topic, but it's in the space of relationship. How do you want to describe it, Kelsey?
Yeah, I would say anything in regards to partnership or relationship and how our physical bodies and energetic bodies impact the relationships that we have.
Perfect. Yes. So let's introduce ourselves and then we'll get right into it. My name is Casey Kephart. I'm a functional medicine nutritionist. I am the founder of the Feel Good Formula, and I work with women with all different types of autoimmune diseases to get you back to the activities you love to do, trash those symptoms, and get your life back. Jessica?
And I'm Jessica Melnick. I'm a registered holistic nutritionist, the founder of the Anti-Arthritis Method, the host of the Happy Joints Arthritis Solutions Group, and I help both women and men with various forms of arthritis get back to living life the way they choose to, not the way that they have to. And I'll pass it on to you, Dr. Kelsey.
Thanks. Yeah, I am a somatic educator and mindfulness coach, and also a professor at the University of Central Florida, where I research and write about basically all things mindfulness and understanding the body holistically. And I'm founder of the Mindful Prof. Sorry, was a big construction happening outside that distracted me, which is applying my mindfulness skills. But my apologies about the noise in the background just now.
Yeah. So we had Kelsey on, 5-6 months ago, maybe, and we talked about perceived stress. So if you want to go back and listen to that video, it's on our YouTube channels. But today we don't really talk about relationships in general on this channel, right? We talk mainly about autoimmune disease and how to eat and how to do your lifestyle, but it's mainly alone. And when you have an autoimmune disease, doing this alone is tough. And especially when you have a partner or a spouse at home, we cohabitate, right? And our lives combine, and us having an autoimmune disease affects our partner and vice versa, right? So Kelsey has some really great mechanisms to help not fix, but to help the dynamic of your relational space thrive. So Kelsey, take it away wherever you would like to start, and go from there.
Yeah, first I'd like to start off by just defining a couple of the concepts, because sometimes this information is relatively new to folks, and always like to have that grounding context and vocabulary just to begin the conversation. So I'm happy to do that from the get-go. And I'm going to wait for the noise in the background to pause.
It's not too bad. It's like a vibrational sound.
Oh, good. Maybe it's really.
We can't hear it that much on this end.
Good. Perfect. Yeah. It feels really calming on this side, but I didn't want it to distract from the conversation at hand. So I'll first define somatic. As I said, that I am a somatic educator. And just essentially what that means is I like to think of it as the opposite side of traditional therapeutic methods, where oftentimes within counseling or in psychology as a whole, it's largely been from a cognitive understanding of who we are, meaning I like to think of it also like a top-down approach. And what I mean by that is if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's many different things that we require as a human being to be fully functional. When we are going into therapy from a cognitive understanding, we do it from the self-actualization piece, meaning addressing the mind first and then going down into deeper understanding of who we are. I do it from the exact opposite side of Maslow's hierarchy, where we start from the bottom and then go up, meaning we have to address what's happening in the body first, feelings of safety, security. Because oftentimes, if we don't address those, it's very challenging to get to what's actually happening in the mind. And oftentimes, what's happening in our bodies contributes to what's happening in our minds and vice versa. So I even think about it from understanding autoimmune disease. What's happening in the body largely impacts what's happening in the mind, and how both are really necessary to heal and come into a fuller understanding of ourselves. So essentially, somatic is the other side of therapy, where it focuses on the body and how it impacts the mind.
Love that.
Yeah, so always like to cover that baseline first. But what we'll be focusing on today is a term known as co-regulation. And you probably have heard this term in spaces such as working with kids, or if you have kids at home, you might have just already known, like, oh, well, I as a parent have to co-regulate in order for my child to feel regulated. So the same is said in our relationships, whether that be in our friendships, our work relationships, and especially with our romantic relationships as well, whether that be with our husband or wife or whoever you are romantically involved with. Co-regulation does impact the relational space. And you're going to hear me use the term relational space quite often. And what I mean by that is how we're interacting with whoever's in front of us, whether that be our husband, wife, friend, child, etc. Self-regulation, again, does play into co-regulation. But oftentimes we do hear about self-regulation a whole lot, where it's like, okay, well, I'm responsible for my own health. I'm responsible for how my emotions show up. But we're also responsible for how we're interacting with others around us. We're not just operating in just a corner in the room. This is a society that does require us to be together in the world. And the more that we can understand what co-regulation is, the more that we can actually function as a better human being, and not just focusing on, yes, self-healing, but we can understand our own healing journey even more when we also understand what's happening with the rest of the folks around us too, and be seen and heard in that space. So those are two things that, and I wanted to start off from the get-go with, and also moving into a couple steps today, just to kind of provide some more insight of, well, how do I apply co-regulation in this setting? Why is this important? How can I practice this with my partner?
Yeah. It's such a new topic for all of us. So let's just get into it in your steps of, I think we're starting with interoception, right? Interoception.
Yep. So as far as co-regulation goes, I always like to start out, and I'll give a scenario kind of just to like bring context into this when I'm moving through these steps. So let's say, and I'm going to use me and my partner for an example. So right now, I only have about a month left in my pregnancy, and my body has changed a whole lot. And of course, my husband doesn't necessarily know what I'm personally experiencing in my body. And again, he's like, I don't get it. I see that you're growing. I see that your hormones are changing. But there's just a lot of things that he doesn't necessarily understand of what's being impacted in my body. So we'll use that as a context to move through the steps. And of course, you can apply this as well to not just my pregnancy journey, but to potentially an autoimmune disease as well, as we're all healing in our own different way. So the first step that I like to recommend when we're coming into a conversation with our partner about your healing journey or what you're personally experiencing, so the first step I recommend is understanding yourself first. And this could be again, a very long part of the process and a continual thing that we continue to pursue. But it's a process known as interoception. So this is just a fancy term for knowing what's going on inside of your body. Yet that skill set takes a really long time to develop, and it's continual practice and effort. Essentially, what interoception is I'm getting really curious about where my breath is, where my heartbeat is, what the temperature of my body feels like. So these are very basic skill sets, but you could even dive deeper into, again, I'm going to use my pregnancy as an example of what I'm feeling in my body shift and expand on a daily basis. And if I am not aware of that, it's very challenging to present what I'm actually feeling shift and change to another human being.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be very hard for me to describe my own feelings and perceptions of what's happening with me to another human if I was not connected to my own body. So I fully recognize that this is challenging for many folks. One way to develop this skill set is to be mindful. So noticing the present moment of what is happening in your body. Oftentimes we can notice what's happening in our head because the thoughts can be very loud. But then getting more curious rather than just the head, because we are living and breathing beneath the head as well. Noticing again what might shift and change in your body. And you might want to keep a journal about this because it's hard to take notice of like how our body changes every single day if we are maybe not writing it down. So mindfulness is a wonderful skill set to develop to enhance interoception skills. And noticing what's happening in the body, noticing what's happening, maybe even the emotional changes of your body. And of course, you'll probably notice the cognitive a lot too, because they're very much connected between mind and body spaces. So that is recommendation number one, is to develop the skill set of interoception, of becoming mindful of your body first. So doesn't have to go in this exact order. You might notice that these skills kind of ebb and flow with every single moment, but general recommendation is be mindful of your body for the first step. Second step is another fancy word known as proprioception. I feel like, what was that old show? Oh my gosh, where they would have the word of the day. Anyway, yeah, they would have the word of the day and everyone would scream. I think it was Pee Wee Herman. So now I'm really dating myself. And that's what I would watch. But I feel like we're having word of the day right now. So interoception, yay. Proprioception, yay. Proprioception is going to be another sensory skill set. And all of these we actually work on in elementary school, but then we tend to not continue to develop them as an adult because there's so many things going on. But proprioception is how our bodies take up space around us. And I'm going to use an example from yoga class, because I teach yoga a whole lot. And this is actually what I cue in my yoga classes is proprioceptive abilities. So when we come to our yoga mat, or whether you're lifting weights, working out, however you want to explain it, but when we're on our yoga mats, and if I cue a pose such as Warrior One, I ask my students to be aware of stepping their right foot forward towards the top of the mat and then lift your arms up high towards the ceiling. So if they don't have understanding of where their right foot is in relation to their left foot, or even how to reach their arms up high, those are proprioceptive skills that we develop over time. So we can be a fully functional human being and move about in spaces without like taking our neighbor out when we're walking down the street. So you have to be aware of, even when you're walking down the sidewalk, if somebody is walking towards you, your proprioceptive abilities come in and they're like, oh, okay, I actually need to move towards the side in order for this person to actually pass me by. So how does this relate to relationships? And when we think of relational spaces, meaning my physical body in relation to my partner's body. Often it shows up in the bedroom. It might show up even in conversation that I'm having, or even in like when I'm cooking a meal in the kitchen. Um, Proprioception shows up all the time. So again, I'm going to relate it back to my own experience with pregnancy. And this is kind of a funny example. My body's consistently growing. And if I did not have proprioceptive ability, my belly would be bumping into my husband all the freaking time. So there's that physical understanding. But if we move a little bit deeper into the energetic understanding of body to body, I would not be able to witness what is good for my partner. For example, um, if I'm coming into the room and I see that his shoulders are slouched and he's a little bit down, and then I'm coming in, barging into the room in just a very aggressive manner, that is also an example of proprioception that could impact my body language, would directly impact how he's feeling, where maybe that aggressive behavior would make him go even lower and retract even more. So it's not just how my body is taking up physical space, but I also think about the energetic space in the room. So again, on your own healing journey, if you were to apply this, thinking about how the impact of your illness or what you're presently experiencing, that impacts your body a whole lot, and it impacts your mood, your mindset. But noticing how all of that also impacts your partnership. And again, it goes both ways. So your energetic body, yes, it's impacting your partner. Your partner's energetic body in the room that you're in is impacting your own relationality with them. So there's, again, two-way street. So it's not just this person that's healing is responsible for everything in the relationship. The partner is also responsible for how they're showing up in the relational space as well. So we've learned two new words: interoception, so thinking about what's happening in your own body, and proprioception, what's happening between you and your partner, both physically and how your bodies are presenting themselves, but also energetically in the room. The next two steps are not as intense per se. There's no new vocabulary, so that's always nice. So once we kind of have this deeper understanding of like, okay, well, what's happening with me? And then what's happening in the energy in the space around us? You can do this in real time when you're understanding yourself and the person in front of you. Next up would be getting mindful communication involved. And I point to my mouth that is one way to communicate, but also our body language is another way to communicate how we're feeling. So mindful communication would involve deep listening of whatever your partner is experiencing. You listen to what they're saying, trying not to anticipate what they're saying in real time, that you are with them. That's always the hardest part. So there's deep listening skills, also coming from a place of curiosity and inquiry. And then finally, focusing on what matters. So creating boundaries in the conversation, focusing on I statements rather than you statements. And I always like to have that as a final, like the third step, is if we are not aware of the spaces that we're operating in, it would be very challenging to have actually a mindful communication of what is happening within you and within your partner. Final step would be mindfully tracking in real time. And it kind of ties everything back together of what I was previously mentioning, of applying the skill sets of what's going on in your body and what's going on with potentially your partner's body or the space that you're in, and noticing it in real time. And this is something that does need to be practiced. It might not be noticed within the first conversation, but the more that we can pick up on how our body, like if I'm having an intense conversation with my husband and I'm like, this is how I'm feeling. I'm really frustrated with my pregnancy. I'm really frustrated that my body is changing. Like I might start to notice anxiety building up, and it might diminish the conversation at hand. If I am not able to notice anxiety in my body, it could detract from the purpose of the conversation. And same is to be said of me noticing in real time of the words and body language that I'm experiencing and sending those signals to my partner, how that might be impacting him in real time. So these are things, again, that maybe you're naturally doing, but if we can apply a mindful lens to the moment, it just makes everything a lot more productive, and everybody can be seen and heard in a more efficient way.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of an example in my mind as you're saying that, like with your pregnancy, there's a lot of hard conversations that autoimmune disease man and woman need to talk about too.
Yep.
And so one of them, one hard conversation, Jessica brought it up earlier, would be the financial aspect of having an autoimmune disease, right? And that's
Totally.
a tough conversation to talk about money in general, let alone something that might be so personal for you because you want to get help, but then you're perceiving your spouse is saying no or rejecting you. So let's kind of use that example maybe and tell us how to walk through that scenario.
So that's an excellent example. And it's something that I often see in clients is financial stress. Because again, the world is a bundle of financial stress, depending upon especially like demographic or what that person is experiencing at the time. So if I go and look at the steps again, if financial stress is already a trigger for you, and maybe you don't know that it's a trigger. So again, I'm going to go with like, maybe there's not that knowledge yet. Coming into interoception, like the understanding of how your body is responding to financial stress, you might begin to notice that your body gets warm, which is generally a sign of anxiety and just moving into that fight or flight state of just further activation. If that is continually happening when you are noticing financial stress, then that is definitely something to be aware of if you're having that conversation with your partner. That generally I suggest in couples somatic coaching to almost have like a safe word of when you're starting to feel more activated. So our safe word is tomato. It's very silly because it's not really related to any conversation really, unless like I'm making a BLT. But we have a safe word for both of us for when somebody else is feeling really activated and needs to exit the conversation. And that applies to interoceptive abilities, but it also applies to proprioception, where I am noticing what is happening with my partner. And my partner's already saying, hey, tomato, my safe word, like I needed some time to like not be in this relational space because I'm feeling activated by the conversation. You're also doing that in real time and noticing your body, noticing what's happening, and then giving yourself the ability to exit out if needed. So you table the conversation and then come back in when you're not as dysregulated in your own body, or if your partner's dysregulated, and you respect that space because you created those boundaries for yourself.
I think
so you just apply. Go ahead, sorry.
No, that was a great example. I was thinking too, as you were talking, Kelsey, about like interoception itself. I think that is such a huge thing for, I know myself and people in my community, just, and I think that a lot of us don't have the skills until we actually become aware that this is even a thing. So I see so many like clients and people in my community that they don't have that self-awareness of, you know, even like how they're feeling. So they are not making their connection between the physical, their thoughts, their energy that they're putting out there. And I think that it's so important for us to have that awareness and develop that awareness, because
Completely.
then we can't ask our partner for what we need if we can't even put words to it. We
Totally.
might instead be kind of lashing out, or we might be going into ourselves and retreating,
Yep.
and maybe not engaging in the relationship, or whatever behavior we kind of automatically go to that makes us feel safer or more comfortable when we are uncomfortable. So I think
Completely.
that just that mindfulness about what is actually happening in our body besides just the pain of our autoimmune or
Right.
conditions. And I think that's so important.
Yeah. It just makes me think a lot about the building blocks of this process. And if somebody is in pain and they don't have the skill set to understand what's happening in their own body and like how everything connects, how that impacts a relationship automatically, is again, the partner might not be intending to lash out, but because they're experiencing so much pain and don't necessarily know where it's coming from, it's just, it enhances potential issues and challenges in whatever partnership that you're in.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think too that whole mindfulness of how we're communicating is so important when it comes to asking for what we need. So I think that first being aware, and then second being able to communicate it in a way that our partner is going to be able to receive it. So like you said,
Correct.
using those I messages instead of kind of the accusatory, well, you do this and you do that. It's more like I feel
Yes.
overwhelmed when I'm doing all these things around the house and I need help because my body either hurts, or I need more time to look after my physical self, or I need more time to rest, or I need to be able to go to yoga, or I need to be able to go swimming, or I need to be able to do these different activities for my health. And I need that support. I need some of these things taken off of my plate. So focusing on the I as opposed to the accusatory you. And I think just being mindful of how your body feels while you're having that conversation.
Oh, completely.
Remembering to breathe so that you can kind of stay calm. And then that energy is going to also feed off on your partner as well.
Right.
Less
Right.
intimidating, I think, to have those tough conversations.
Correct. And also recognizing that it's a lot required of your partner as well, that if your partner is also not doing the work, it's going to be very challenging to meet in the middle, if they haven't worked on the interoceptive skills themselves. So there's no perfect formula to this, but there are things that each partner could work on that would enhance the relationship and coming together and having some of these difficult conversations.
How do you, because I'm thinking in the scenario of a woman going up to her partner and talking about these things that they're learning here, right? How do you even bring up that your partner needs to be more interoceptive? Like, how do you bring that awareness to them? It takes two to tango, but
Right, exactly. And honestly, it would have to be, again, stating in an I statement of, I feel like our relationship could potentially be enhanced by just getting more curious about what's happening in your body. So if you don't voice it, it would be very challenging to even like have the partner know that that was an issue.
yeah, I get that. We have a question for you from your channel. It looks like, do all relationships have to be based on interest?
I'm not, if I could get more context to that question, that would be super helpful. Because I'm not just having a challenging time understanding like interests as in like I like yoga. My husband likes to watch sports. So is it that type of interest, or is it in relation to again, proprioceptive interest? I don't know. I don't even know if actually proprioceptive interest is a thing.
Oh, that's funny. So to tie it all together, we're kind of at time here, and I'll keep an eye out for the question too. is we're talking about this one because stress leads to autoimmune disease, chronic inflammatory disease, but being aware of ourselves internally and having that healthy relationship with your partner and being able to do it together can help the healing journey even further.
Correct.
Because we're making this space less stressful for us, more safe, and something you do want to come home to and feel comfortable talking to your partner to. And I know for both Jessica and I, with having toxic relationships in the past, it worsens your healing journey. It slows it down or halts it in general. So if we can implement these healthy mindfulness tactics and talking tactics and just being aware in general of ourselves and how we come off to our partners, it could really help this space and increase your healing journey a little bit more. And it's just another piece in the puzzle that we can connect and keep learning about. So Kelsey, we really appreciate having you on. Do you want to share where people could find you and how and kind of what your services look like?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Casey.
Mm-hmm.
So you can find me at themindfulprof.com. It's my business. And underneath that, within the space of what the Mindful Prof offers, somatic coaching. So it could look like, again, working into the body through the understanding of what's showing up emotionally, physically for yourself, energetically, ways to access that. Could be through yogic practices, meditation practices, Reiki, hypnosis. Other ways I also access those spaces are through some cognitive-based approaches. Because I like to think of it like a battle tactic of if we're only entering into one way, it's more effective to actually flank from the other side too at the same time. So many different approaches to access just overall healing and what actually somatic is. So yes, one-on-one coaching, yes, group coaching as well. I also offer courses of Mindfulness 101, trauma-informed mindfulness. We're actually, my partner and I, with a different LLC, we are offering a somatic training as well. So some of the specific somatic practices that go into helping just calm your central nervous system. So one example would be, you've probably seen this before, of butterfly tapping. So learning all those different skill sets and how to apply them in real time. And training is coming up for that in the summer. You can also find me on Instagram at the Mindful Prof LLC. And on Facebook under Kelsey Evans-Amalu, also the Mindful Prof LLC as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelsey, so much. If anybody has questions on the replay, please feel free to put them in there and we will answer them or give them to Kelsey to answer. And everybody have a good week. Jessica will be back on Thursday and we'll catch you later.
Take care, everyone.